There's more you can do. Like I still tell people, go get diagnosed, because it could be a lot for people to just know that they have it, right? To have that confirmation, because then they can pinpoint, okay, this is what I know I have, so I can actually now double down and focus on it. But you should do more than that. You should actually do further investigation and testing, because I guarantee you, you do have deficiencies throughout your body, because we see it a lot in research. Every time I run these tests, I've never had one person have a just complete balanced body chemistry. Never has happened since I've done it. There's always something, because people with ADHD tend to always have some imbalances. And by identifying that, that really can resolve a lot of your ADHD symptoms.
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman. Let's get started. Hi, Dr. LeGrand Peterson. Welcome to Successful with ADHD. So nice to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So for those of you who don't know Dr. LeGrand Peterson, he has ADHD and dyslexia, and he's passionate about helping his clients rewire their brain to achieve an optimal focused mind so they can have more success at work and life and have a clear thinking mind and unlock their true potential. And for those of you also who don't know, ADHD and learning disabilities are very common. There's about 50 to 60% of individuals with ADHD who have a learning disability and 17% who have dyslexia. So welcome. I think that your story is going to help a lot of people here today. So did you know that you had dyslexia first or ADHD first or both at the same time? What was that like for you?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So actually dyslexia first. So my mom took me in to go get assessed because she knew there was something wrong at a very young age. I think it was even before kindergarten. She thought I had a hearing issue, actually. She thought I had selective hearing and had some hearing issues. And so I went and get assessed. And they wanted to actually put me into special ed. They thought I had really severe special needs. My mom didn't want to put me through that. So she decided homeschooling. That actually started the process of homeschooling. And so then she went and got me assessed again, found out that I had dyslexia. And growing up, I mean, they even told me that I had ADHD, but I never was actually officially diagnosed with ADHD until I went to college to go get assessed because I was having more challenges in college. And, you know, I had a buddy, my best friend, he had ADHD. He's like, dude, you should get assessed. So I did, and that's where I got finally assessed and diagnosed then. But yeah, dyslexia first and then ADHD.
Gotcha. So you were homeschooled all the way up until college?
Sophomore year in high school. So I did part-time in high school. So at that time, like, you know, my mom, I needed a little bit, we had 9 kids in my family. So a lot of kids. So at that point, she knew I needed to have a little bit additional classes. So I took English, math, and science at the high school part-time my junior year. And then I was able to do running start. So basically you go to college early, basically your junior and senior year. So you have to take what they call an entrance exam. And it was hard for me to pass that entrance exam. It actually took me 3 or 4 times, but it was even a challenge to try to get in doing the running start. So my junior and senior year, I went to a community college and did that.
Gotcha. So you were really only in high school for a year.
Yeah, just for a year, really. Yeah, my experience in high school. Yeah.
So what was it like for you once you learned that you had ADHD in college?
Because I did have challenges. I mean, like I told you, it took me like 4 times to just pass the entrance exam to get accepted into the community college, where a lot of my other friends, they got it the first time. Like it was like easy. I was like, oh, why am I having challenges here? My biggest challenges was definitely English. It was language, reading, writing, reading comprehension. A lot of that was my biggest challenges, I would say. I think math and science wasn't as much of a challenge, but definitely on reading and writing for sure because of dyslexia and the combination of ADHD. So I failed classes even while I was in community college and even when I went off to university. And it wasn't until I actually went to university that I really decided, you know, okay, I really need to figure this out. What's going on? I must have ADHD, so there must be an issue going on here.
Right.
So I went and got assessed, did do the medications. And I think I've told you this story. So, you know, about 20 to 30% even now, statistically, people with diagnosed with ADHD where medications don't work.
It's 30% now? I thought it was 10 to 20.
It's 20 to 30% because if you take into account people with cardiovascular issues, have side effects of heart palpitation. So when you include all of that, it's around 20 to 30%.
Gotcha.
It depends on the research. It changes a lot, but it's roughly around there.
Okay.
And it didn't work for me. Like I tried the medications and I came with a lot of different side effects. I felt definitely my personality and I felt very zombie. So I had to find a different way. And so I kind of started my journey looking for more natural ways of actually implementing to help with my ADHD brain. And, I was able to successfully do that, but I work with a lot of mentors too. That was another thing that I really highly encourage a lot of my clients and patients is, definitely mentors are really important. Like I found a lot of professors that were willing to work with me one-on-one. So I had to work extra hard at it just to pass my classes and be able to get through college and then eventually get into medical school.
Were you receiving any accommodations once you learned that you had ADHD or since you had a dyslexia diagnosis?
So it's a funny thing that I asked that. So back then, I had this thought in my own self that I'm a type of person that like a challenge. Like I embrace challenges. I like challenges. And I saw this as just a challenge and I didn't want to have a hand me out, I guess you could say. I wanted to try to do this without it. So how I did it is because what I did is I would actually develop really good relationships with my professors. Mm-hmm. I would go to their office hours. I would have them look over my papers beforehand, and I would utilize them as much as possible. And even with exams, because especially if I had a classroom, especially when I was at university, when there was like 300 to 400 students, mm-hmm. It was just way too distracting for taking exams. So I would actually, without having, the 504. So I never got that, but I would ask the professor, hey, look, I think I just do better on these exams if I can be in a quiet room. So I had professors that were willing to just let me go in their office. It was still the same time, but they let me go in their office and take it. Yeah. And that way it was a very much quieter space and I ended up performing better just because there was no distraction. And so they were willing to work with me. That's the thing, without having the 504 plan.
Yeah. So you had supportive professors.
Yes. Yep. I think that's very key is to just build a relationship with your professors.
Absolutely. If you had to redo that over because you were homeschooled, then to avoid being in a self-contained classroom, and then you didn't get an IEP or a 504, you didn't want to look different. If you had to go back, would you consider doing anything differently?
Actually, no. Like I said, I think this whole journey it's definitely been an emotional journey, but at the end of it all, even into medical school, by finally actually passing, I feel like a journey, everyone has their own journey, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't think I would ever change it because it's the experiences I had, even for me, and getting a little bit more on the spiritual side of things. For me, I felt like it was a calling for me. And I felt like, and it was something that, God's like, this is something you're supposed to do. I'm like, crazy. Schooling's difficult. Why would you want me to become a doctor? It's way too challenging, but okay. If that's what you really want me to do, then I need your help. And I felt like I had that desire, that passion mm-hmm. to be able to move forward and to deal with the challenges. And at the end of it all, even with all the failures that came with it, because I failed my first chemistry class and I had to retake that. When I took organic chemistry, failed the very first part, had to retake it. And then the second part of organic chemistry, failed that, had to retake it. So it was this whole journey. It's like most people would just give it up, just completely would have given up. That's why we call them weeder classes. Like general chemistry is a weeder class, even organic chemistry is a weeder class. Mm-hmm. And I failed each one and had to retake it. And most people just are done. They're like, okay, medical school's not
organic chemistry is the hardest class.
So going through this, I always was just like, Lord, please, I want to stop this. I don't want to have to do this anymore. This is too much challenge. And I always felt like I was pushed to have to go through this. So at the end of it, I also was able to share this beautiful moment with my wife when I opened that last time on my final boards of seeing that I passed my final boards, that it was done because I was burnt out, having to go through this all. And that was kind of the moment that I felt that there's a reason why I had to go through this.
Okay.
Because I had to experience the challenges of having ADHD and embrace it all so that I could someday help others with the same kind of challenges. Because there's a difference between, when you talk about sympathy and empathy, right? And I think for me, God really wanted me to really experience going through that so I can have actually empathy, because empathy means you actually experience the same similar thing that someone else has gone through. Sympathy, you have sympathy with somebody, but it doesn't mean you've actually gone through that experience from them.
Absolutely.
And so from that experience alone, I feel like that was definitely a critical thing. So I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't ask for additional, I asked for lots of help, from a lot of my professors, even got tutors and stuff like that. But I wanted to go through it with as much the challenges that I had, to say that like I was able to still go through it without having to have a 504 plan, IEP plan, and also could say it even doing without medication too.
Yeah. So it is aligned with kind of where you are right now. It sounds like you're dealing with the symptoms in a natural way. But do you feel that without, going to public school and being homeschooled and without having an IEP, that affected your self-esteem at all? Because there was obviously some social pieces that you weren't able to explore growing up.
Yeah, so there's definitely a huge stigma when it comes to homeschooling. My parents, when they decided to homeschool us, they made it an effort to make sure that we got exposed to a lot of social things. So where I was involved in a lot of sports, church was the other thing too, a lot of like church friends, involved in a lot of additional extracurricular activities.
Okay, so you were able to fill that bucket.
That was it. Yes, and I get it. Like I've been where I've gone and taken exams with a bunch of homeschoolers, and there is some interesting characters out there when it comes to homeschool because they get isolated. So there is that stigma thinking that a lot of homeschoolers now it's very different. Since especially the pandemic, a lot of parents have now started homeschooling their kids.
Yes,
and they homeschool very differently than what the typical homeschooling thought process is. Is like, wanted to never expose a kid to the world. That's not how my parents raised us. Like they wanted us to still learn and actually socialize and stuff like that. So they still exposed us to a lot. So a lot of people would come up to me, it's like, you're homeschooled? I would have never guessed. And so I got that a lot. And it's probably just because I got a lot of exposure. We also did a lot of field trips. Like I probably would say I got a lot more exposed to the world and experience of the world than probably your average kid that goes to public school.
Yeah.
Because we did a lot of things and we went to a lot of places and got involved with a lot of different cultures and stuff like that. And just even my background of like going to Russia, living in Russia for a couple of years, going to Mexico, and like got exposed a lot culturally. So I would say my self-esteem, my parents always said I had a very high self-esteem because I think the challenges actually, because I embraced the challenges, my self-confidence was a lot higher than I'd say the average person. And it's something that I always say my superpower is stubborn persistence. That is my superpower, is what I say, is my stubborn persistence, because I've failed so many times, but I try to pick myself back up again and keep going until try again until, I succeed. So,
I love that. I love that. Stubborn persistence. I'm going to use that. So you aren't on medication to manage your ADHD. You did not have an IEP or a 504. Tell us how you manage your dyslexia and ADHD as an adult right now.
Yeah, as an adult right now. So I will say, I still have dyslexia, I still have ADHD. I never say that I treat ADHD, even when I work with patients, clients, I never say I treat it. But what I say is that I help unlock your true potential with your ADHD. Have your ADHD really become part of who you are, what your true potential with your ADHD is supposed to be. And so for me, like I have what I call my dyslexic moments. And usually that can happen a lot of times. And usually this happens when, at least for me, but I also find that a lot of people with dyslexia have this issue too, is when you get really tired and you're reading a billboard or even reading an email or whatever, then you'll start seeing the letters start jumble. And I'll read out loud on a billboard. My wife's like, that's not what it says. I'm like, and then I'll do a double take. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Like, so I'll have what I call dyslexic moments. And how I handle this, again, it's hiring people that can double look at your stuff. I always double, triple, quadruple check a lot of my stuff, and it is a little bit extra work. But I would say, especially being as a doctor, because I do those things, I don't make as many mistakes as your typical doctor, because people that are very overly confident in their work probably make more mistakes. They don't go through their checklists, right? And
Sure.
You want people to go through the checklist and double, triple checking, especially like a pilot. Again, you want them to be doing that. There's a reason why they have a checklist. Now, when doctors that are very overly confident because they don't have any challenges, that's where I find that they probably make more mistakes because they're too confident and not double and triple checking their stuff. And that's what I just do.
No, I appreciate you saying that. My husband used to be a helicopter and jet pilot. And I remember he was a co-pilot of a jet on one of his first trips. The head pilot said, nah, you don't have to go through the checklist. So they didn't. And they discovered that something that was very important was not done. So the plane almost crashed.
Oh,
And
wow.
luckily, Gabe was able to go through the checklist at that point and figure out what was going on that they missed. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, there's a reason why you do it. It's so important, especially when people's lives are at stake.
absolutely.
As far as the ADHD, so with that, a lot of the ways that I manage it, I've gotten to a point where I call it my 5 big pillars. Supplements are great, but they're only something I use temporarily. Even with my patients and clients, is where it's something we just use temporarily to bring the body chemistry back to balance. But the ultimate goal is actually using food as your medicine, nutrition, and lifestyle changes. So my 5 pillars are always, good nutrition, good sleep, good exercise, eliminating stressors in your life, and hydration. Like those are like, you focus and double down on those 5 things. And that's what I try to just constantly always doubling down on. And as long as I do those, I don't feel like I need to take any supplements at all, or definitely I haven't been able to take medication since college. And by dialing those down and taking the right types of nutrients that are really important for you. And we did discover this more is definitely looking at your body chemistry, seeing the imbalances that are going on there and identifying those. And that's how you can actually really identify what nutrition you need to focus on and helping with your ADHD brain. And so that's how I really kind of manage my ADHD on a daily basis. Now, I will have moments where this happens more in the wintertime, where maybe I'm not so great on those 5 pillars. It's where we kind of hit this, slump, where here in the Northwest, it gets dark at like 3:30 or 4, I guess, really early.
Talk about a lack of vitamin D there.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's certain things I'm like, okay, I might need to take some essential supplements I might take during that time because maybe I'm not so great on those 5 pillars. So I will find myself sometimes going back to some of the supplementation that I need to do. But for the most part, especially during the spring and summer months, I don't have to rely on any kind of supplements, just on those 5 pillars.
For those of you who don't know, I have been posting Dr. LeGrand in my stories because you shared with me some tests that I should take to find out what's going on in my brain and my gut and my body. Yeah. And I can't wait to do a thorough test. First of all, do you want to just share with everyone what those tests were that you recommended for me and why? Because I know that a lot of people are curious about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, what we do, because there's lots of different tests out there. So, I met with Brooke and just kind of got more of just a medical history, because it's important. I think whenever you're going to decide to invest in testing, it's important to really meet with a doctor that can look at your medical history and your past medical history and just stuff that you've done, and look at past testing and look at it all. So that's what I'll do. And so with you, Brooke, the things that were important to, definitely because of the digestive history, checking your gut flora. So doing a whole panel on testing your gut flora there. Also looking at micronutrients. So it's always important that I find that, a lot of people, especially with ADHD, are more prone to being micronutrient deficient. So we do a full panel of testing all micronutrients. This is all vitamins, minerals, amino acids, antioxidants, testing them all. And then on top of that is also checking for hormones. So it's really important to, especially checking for hormones, things like cortisol levels that deal a lot with our energy throughout the day, can impact our focus throughout the day, can impact our stress levels. So it's important to look at those. Looking at progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, DHEA, which is a precursor to testosterone and estradiol, because the hormones can really impact our ADHD brain significantly, impact our mood, impact our stress levels, impact our sleep, impact our energy, impact it in so many different ways. So it's always want to make sure. So I like making sure that we're checking everything that we possibly can based off your medical history. Also testing for neurotransmitters too. So a lot of people think it's just a dopamine problem. Now these are neurotransmitter testing throughout the entire body. A lot of people ask this question. It isn't just testing specifically brain. The testing is not that advanced. It's actually testing throughout the body. In fact, a lot of people don't realize this, but 90 to 95% of a lot of our neurotransmitters are actually made in our gut. Everyone wants to think that the brain produces most of them, but it's actually a lot of them are actually produced in the gut. People don't realize that. So this is testing for just neurotransmitters throughout the entire body. And it's important to understand that, to see, okay, where are the actual deficiencies? Is it really a dopamine problem, norepinephrine problem? And I will say it's not always the case. People with ADHD, and you probably know this, Brooke, it isn't just ADHD. There's always another additional comorbidity disorder.
Usually, yeah.
People with ADHD are more prone to it. In fact, there's research on this that we are 2.5 times more likelihood to get additional comorbidity issues, things like anxiety, depression, bipolar issue, substance abuse and addiction, and then other detrimental things such as like Alzheimer's disease and cardiovascular and diabetes.
Learning disabilities, OCD, autism.
There's so much, and not one ADHD person is the same. And that's why I like to say the testing helps me to use to help to make it more individualized, to be able to actually treat the root cause of why you can't be focused, why you're dealing with anxiety, why you might have a low energy, which happens a lot with adults with ADHD, and why you just feel burnt out. Maybe why you have depression, and why you have these other maybe health issues that might be causing more symptoms, maybe even thyroid issue, which actually can present very similarly to ADHD symptoms. And a lot of times people with ADHD do never get that checked. If there's anything, like that's something you should definitely rule out, especially women with ADHD. Like 1 in 8 women actually have a thyroid issue. That's higher than women with ADHD or even adults with ADHD. It's like 1 in 10 for kids. Adults, it's lower than that. So you have a higher chance of actually getting a thyroid issue if you're a woman than with ADHD.
And anxiety if you're a woman. We're truly blessed.
Yeah, I know. There's a reason why 70+% of my patients and clients are women. Women are more health conscious than men. That's just how it is. And that's just across the board. If you go to any clinic or any hospital, about probably 70+% of their patient and clientele are probably going to be women.
Let me ask you a hard question. I just had Dr. Amen on my podcast, and he believes that with a SPECT scan, we can diagnose ADHD. Do you believe with your neurotransmitter assessment that's done that you can assess or rule out ADHD?
I think with the neurotransmitter, so even with the SPECT scan, I think the more tools you can use, instead of just having one witness, right? It's good to have 3 witnesses. However you want to take that, religiously or however way, but it's always important to have 3, I think, points of defiance of actually confirming something, in my opinion. So SPECT scan would be 1. That's why I don't always just do neurotransmitter testing, because again, it isn't like complete, because it's not testing specifically the brain, it's testing throughout the body, which is good information. So I like to test it along with hormones. I like to test it along with micronutrient deficiencies and other testing depending on your medical history. So what I want to see is I do want to see the medical industry to start embracing some of these testing, even the SPECT scan and other these, to use it as tools to diagnose someone with ADHD. Because in my opinion, and we have seen the research on this, about 50% of people get misdiagnosed with ADHD or not diagnosed with ADHD and diagnosed with just anxiety or depression, especially women. Women definitely follow this category significantly. And if we can use these other tools to say, okay, they've done the questionnaire, it maybe didn't hit every point that we think, but now we've done a SPECT scan, we've done some of these other testing, but this confirms maybe, you know what, she probably does have ADHD because these other things are pointing in that direction. So maybe she just didn't answer the questionnaire very well, or he didn't answer the questionnaire very well. Because the questionnaire can be skewed.
Especially if you overthink things and have a processing issue, or you have dyslexia. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
So for those of you listening right now, if you did not come up on a survey that you have ADHD, it doesn't mean that you don't have it. So there's other tools.
Exactly. And I get this all the time. In fact, probably more than half of our patient clients that I work with don't even have the ADHD diagnosis. I tell them, like, to me, I don't need that. Because
you need to know their symptoms and their descriptions, right?
Exactly. You know their symptoms, what they're dealing with right now, and then doing testing to really understand the root cause of why you have those symptoms. To me, the diagnosis doesn't give me any information. It doesn't. Because, like, okay, great, you have the diagnosis, but what does that tell me?
But everyone looks different, right? So like you have cancer. Do you have stage 1, 2, 3, 4? Where in the body do you have it? You have ADHD. Yeah. Well, there's plenty of symptoms. I think someone said that there's like 6,000 ways that ADHD can be seen.
Wow.
So you have ADHD. I have ADHD. Yeah. We might present very differently. So just because, and Dr. Mate said this too, like it's a diagnosis, but a diagnosis doesn't explain anything. It's a description. Yeah,
no, for sure. And I actually did in the continuing education that Dr. Amen provides for doctors. And so, you know, I really think it's a great tool. I know he gets a lot of flack from the Psychological Association, you know, where he's a board certified psychiatrist on this. And it's just because he's changing. He's actually pioneering something different, because if you really think about it, when ADHD was diagnose, or actually we need to put all mental health in a category. Since all mental health issues have been diagnosed, the treatment and the process has really not changed since then. You look at anything, this is what I decided, like, this is one industry that needs to be really, when I was in medical school, it's like, look, diabetes, cardiovascular issues, cancer, all these other conditions have advanced way more than all the mental health stuff. Mental health is like not advanced at all as far as the process of actually diagnosing. And even with, I think at this point in time in the era, like the technology that we have, I'm surprised we haven't got any further. So like someone like Dr. Amen, and even like myself, that's like trying to actually approach it very differently to just have more witnesses, more than just the questionnaire, to really pinpoint more of the root cause and helping and treating, people with ADHD.
Absolutely. I just learned, and I didn't even know this, I thought I knew every single name for ADHD, but I just learned that minimal brain dysfunction was one of the original names for ADHD. So if the name for ADHD can change, which it still should, because it does not describe the ADHD at all, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, doesn't explain what's happening with us at all. So that needs to change too. Then the way that we treat people and the way that we diagnose people can definitely be explored.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, no, for sure.
Tell me a little bit about the process. Once you test someone, once you see the person, you figure out, which tests they should take to get more of an inside picture of your body, your brain, your gut, whatever. And then you go through it. And what happens?
Yeah, so once I've gotten a chance to look at all the testing, then I put together a more customized treatment plan. This is going to be usually a very thorough, in-depth nutrition plan. Like I said, I do use supplementation initially because it's difficult for someone to jump in and change their diet, change their nutrition completely like overnight. It does take time. And so what I try to do is help people, look, it needs to be a lifestyle change and not a diet. Don't treat this as a diet, treat this as a lifestyle change. So here are the things that you need to be focusing on introducing more of. But I'm not asking you to get rid of all your wonderful foods that you desire, but change the ratios, right? Where you're focusing a little bit more on what you should be implementing, a little less, and you work and you build towards that. And so I still do get supplementation based off of the testing because you can do higher doses on that and helping people get results. And that kind of helps motivate people to continue forward with the treatment. But then along with that, there's also another important factor. Remember, one of the pillars I said is eliminate stressors. So what I call is removing internal and external factors. If you don't address removing internal or external factors in your life, it doesn't matter what kind of treatment plan I give you or any doctor gives you,
you're still going to be stressed out and your ADHD symptoms are going to be exacerbated.
Exactly. You're sabotaging your health and you can't allow your body to heal. So it doesn't matter how wonderful a treatment plan it is and it's the best one for you. If you don't address that, and I see this time and time again, and I always stress this so much when I'm working with people, it's like, and we'll focus on that. We'll be like, all right, we need to figure out, give you tools to be able to eliminate these internal and external stressors that are sabotaging your health. So that way your body chemistry can change.
Yes.
So, because once you can change your body chemistry, guess what? Now you can implement strategies. Get better at being, doing the self-improvement and actually implementing things that your coach is giving you and implementing all these things that you're trying to do because you're finally change your body chemistry.
Yes. When people come to us and they're like, oh, can you help me with my productivity? Give me the best calendar, the best schedule, the best time management system.
Yeah.
I could give you all of that. You could give them all of that.
Yeah.
But if you're not sleeping, if you're in a stressed household or environment, if you have like a very toxic work environment, if you're barely functioning with your kids, you're not going to be able to focus on your calendar. You got to get clear.
You're not. Exactly. And I think a lot of people miss that is the importance of body chemistry. And I don't see a lot of people in the industry really addressing that. Even treating ADHD, they might be changing biochemistry through medication, but they're not actually confirming if that is really what they need to be taking. Confirming it with giving evidence of testing to see, okay, do I really need to take it? Because a questionnaire, in my opinion, isn't enough. That's just me. I mean, I know a lot of doctors will disagree on that. That's because that is something as gold standard that has been the same ever since it's been diagnosed. And we do need to change our way. If we're going to really try to push the boundaries in science and helping people with mental health, we got to push the boundaries as finding other ways to investigate so we can help people with mental health.
Yeah. So for those of you listening, I know this can be a very sensitive topic on how to treat ADHD, how to confirm you have ADHD. So I don't think that Dr. LeGrand here is saying that it's not valid to do a questionnaire, but there's more than just that.
There's more you can do. Exactly. That's all I'm saying is that like I still tell people go get diagnosed, because it could be a lot for people to just know that they have it, right?
Yeah.
To have that confirmation, because then they can pinpoint, okay, this is what I know I have, so I can actually now double down and focus on it. But you should do more than that. You should actually do further investigation and testing, because I guarantee you, you do have deficiencies throughout your body, because we see it a lot in research. And also, I know by doing this testing all the time, I see always, every time I run these tests, I've never had one person have a just complete balanced body chemistry. Never has happened since I've done it. There's always something, because people with ADHD tend to always have some imbalances. And by identifying that, that really can help really resolve a lot of your ADHD symptoms.
Yeah. Dr. LeGrand, I would love to have you back once all of my assessments are in.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
we can go through that, and I could be a live case study for you and for the audience, because I know a lot of my Instagram followers are curious on what these tests are going to produce. And also, I know you know a lot about psilocybin and lion's mane. I would love for you to come back and talk about that, because there's so much unknown related to that.
Yeah. They're looking for anything possible, because I will say, even with ADHD medications working for you, people still find it isn't quite nearly enough, right? And so I work with people even when they're taking medications to use supportive treatment. And that can actually enhance helping eliminate ADHD symptoms along with your medications. And so I work with people like that all the time. And it is a beautiful thing, because you're actually using additional supportive treatment along with that to help that. And in fact, it can actually prolong the effects of the medication, because you're implementing other natural things on top of that can prolong the actual medication. Because some people find like, oh yeah, the medication only works, a few hours.
The absorption of the medication, right?
Some people will complain that it only works 2 hours for me, whereas other people might work 8 hours because their metabolism is different. But you use additional supportive treatments, you can find it actually lasts longer, because you're implementing the things to help support your current treatment.
Speaking of absorption, and we'll leave off here because there's so much other good content that, again, I'll bring you back on hopefully in a couple of months so our listeners can hear what you have to say. MCT oil. I use that in my coffee in the morning. My coffee is not the first thing I drink. Don't worry. I drink water. I have a protein. I have a fat, all of that before.
Right.
But to your point, I don't know if this is a horrible analogy or if this is just an analogy, but MCT oil in your coffee helps with absorption so you don't spike and then drop. So I'm curious if what you're saying with extra tools or food or whatever it is that you have people take with their ADHD supplements, that is what helps them absorb and keep focus and their ADHD medication in their body.
Yeah, so you bring up a good question, because another thing that we do test for is actually testing people's metabolism rate and what kind of type of metabolism they have. And this helps a lot also kind of put together a nutrition plan too, because there's certain foods, different metabolism types that actually can do well with eating higher processed fats or higher proteins and more dense proteins, because they need that part of their metabolism. Whereas others, maybe not so much. They need more lighter proteins. They need more higher vegetable intake. And even, when we're going to fats, even the MCT oil might be a little bit hard to digest for a different type of metabolism type. And so everybody does have different metabolisms, and something that we have to look at too, because I think that's important, especially when absorbing your foods. And even when it comes to metabolizing, even supplements or medications that you're taking. So definitely something that we definitely look at is the metabolism, your metabolism rate, to be able to see that.
Great. So for those people who want to check you out, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm all on all social medias. I'm primarily on YouTube. I have a lot of YouTube content. It's just Dr. LeGrand, Dr. LeGrand, or you type in Dr. LeGrand as well. You'll find me in both categories there. I have a lot of videos. I talk about ADHD a lot. I do talk a lot about nootropics too, because a lot of people ask questions about that. I do live streams every single week too on Wednesday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
In fact, you might catch one of ours, a previous one.
Exactly. Yes, Brooke was on one of ours. Exactly. And so those are at Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm on Instagram. I'm just getting back into Instagram. That's also just Dr. LeGrand spelled out. I'm also on TikTok, Dr. LeGrand spelled out as well. Also on Facebook too. So also Dr. LeGrand.
Let me guess, Dr. LeGrand spelled out?
Yep. So I make sure everything's easy to find me. Yep. You just type in Dr. LeGrand, you'll find me. So.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on today.
Well, thank you for having me, Brooke.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Successful with ADHD. I hope it helped you on your journey. And if you need any additional support for you or a loved one with ADHD, feel free to reach out to us at coachingwithbrooke.com and all social media platforms at Coaching with Brooke. And remember, it's Brooke with an E. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.